So if you are looking at this picture, this is a picture of sea level rise. So how did I get this picture? Okay. Um, Rising sea levels could swamp the US coastline by 2050. This is a prediction of NASA. And so sea levels are likely rising faster than previously thought, meaning low-lying coastal cities in the US could flood far more regularly in the coming decades, a NASA study revealed. So, according to the study, which analyzed 3 decades of satellite observations, by 2050, sea level along the coastline of the contiguous U.S. could rise as much as 12 inches, which is 30 centimeters above current water lines, the research team said in a statement. So the Gulf Coast and Southeast are expected to be the most severely impacted and will likely experience increased storm and tidal flooding in the near future, according to the study published October the 6th in the journal. So Communications, Earth, and Environment. The findings support the higher range scenario laid out in February. So, in the multi agency sea level rise technical report, the report suggests that significant sea level rise is liable to hit the U.S. coast within the next 30 years, predicting 10 to 14 inches, 25 to 35 centimeters of rise on average. For the East Coast, 14 to 18 inches, 35 to 45 centimeters. For the Gulf Coast, 4 to 8 inches, 10 to 20 centimeters for the West Coast. NASA's study built on methods used in the earlier multi agency report and was headed by a team of researchers and scientists that based the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, which is dedicated to both exploring the deepest recesses of space and also using satellites to advance understanding the Earth. So NASA's research harnessed satellite altimeter measurements of sea surface height and then correlated them with National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's the tide gauge records dating back over 100 years. So, as a result, NASA can confidently state that its satellite readings are not anomalous and are fully supported by findings on the ground. So, while the new study findings are undoubtedly cause for concern, Jonathan Overpeck, an interdisciplinary climate scientist at the University of Michigan who was not involved with the research, suggests that the projections have by no means come out of the blue. So NASA's findings appear to be robust and they are not surprising at all. So we know that sea level rise is accelerating. So there's a lot of articles, a lot of talk about the sea level rise and climate change. So I'm adding that because there is talk about it. And so we know, according to this article, that the sea level rise is accelerating. We know why. He told Live Science in an email. So more and more polar ice is melting. And this is on top of the oceans expanding as they warm. So clearly, the sea level rise will get worse as long as we let climate change continue. And I believe they're not really doing enough or they waited late. That's my opinion. And it's too little too late. or too far too late. Um, I believe that it already is underway. So that's my opinion. But the viewpoint is shared by a David Holland, a physical climate scientist and professor of mathematics at the New York University, who was not involved with the study. So the quality of the satellite data is excellent. And so the findings are reliable. So Holland told Live Science in an email the study shows that the global ocean is rising. And more than that, the rise is accelerating. So that means it's getting faster. So the projected rise for the Gulf Coast of about 1 foot by 2050 is enormous. So this can make hurricane related storm surges even worse than is presently the case. So other factors may also contribute to rising sea levels along the US coastline. The study indicated that the issue associated with rising sea levels could be amplified by natural variabilities on Earth, such as the effects of El Nino, La Nina by the mid 2030s. So, with every U.S. coast set to encounter more intense high tide floods due to the wobble in the moon's orbit, that occurs every 18.6 years, according to the statement. So, the effects of El Nino, the warming of the surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean near South America, which can lead to increased rainfall, and La Nina, the cooling of the surface ocean waters in the Pacific, can make accurately forecasting the sea level rise a challenge and can potentially skew readings. So Ben Hamilton, leader of NASA's sea level change team, noted that the natural events, the phenomena, will always need to be taken into consideration, and said that all forecasts will inevitably be refined as satellites gather data over time. And so, despite the study's bleak findings, some experts are hopeful still that impactful high profile research such as this will compel decision makers to focus on addressing the ongoing climate crisis and encourage the public to demand effective measures be introduced. So it is impossible to ignore because, it is happening whether people want to believe it or not, or they agree with it or not, or they think it's not going to happen because they don't see significant impacts. But I will say this, what I've been seeing is like here in LA County, I think it could be a mix of things. Also, not cleaning out the gutters and the sewage system very well. But what I noticed is that there has, over the years, been more flooding when it rains. And when there's like a heavy, heavy rain, you'll see streets that are totally flooded and cars can't really even go through those areas, those intersections. And sometimes they have to avoid it altogether for fear that their car might get stuck into the water or stalled. And it's like your car is swimming in the water. And so it seems like it's gotten higher and higher. It's, I've seen it. It is really bad. And so I believe maybe there might be groundwater involved, and there's all this trash that is not really getting cleaned out, and it might be fear because of the COVID, and all the trash is like gloves and masks and whatever else, germs, from people being sick. So maybe they're not really cleaning it well. It says it's impossible to ignore what's going on. So I think that increased flooding is catalyzing action as many coastal communities are discussing the issues and how they respond. So this is said by Robert Nichols, director of the Tyndall Center for Climate Change Research in the UK, who was not involved in the study. So we have the means to deal with this challenge in terms of mitigation to stabilize global temperatures and slow but not completely stop sea level rise. They want to slow it. So they know they can't stop it, but they're trying to work to slow it. So that just gives you the indicator of what's going on and the magnitude of what could happen in the future. Unfortunately, it will continue for centuries due to the warming of the planet we have already experienced. So ultimately, humanity will need to adapt as climate change alters the planet, oceans, and the seas. So it sounds scary, but it's real. So this could involve retreat in some places, raising land in other places, and defenses elsewhere. Nichols told Live Science. Basically, what they're saying, and they're saying this nicely, it's what I was saying that people will begin to migrate where there's no rising sea or rising waters. Some of the housing and the buildings will be flooded and it won't be livable. And so people will begin to migrate in areas where it's higher land above sea level or above the rising sea levels, and that's what will happen. And I bet it's going to raise cause for concern. And then people who, I hate to say this, I know this is going to sound scary, but I could see people capitalizing on that. They will try to use that as living in a higher ground is more expensive than living on the lower land, because that's where it's not ideal, and it's problematic because there's rising waters and rising sea level. And so there's going to be somebody or somebodies that will probably try to capitalize on it, which is the scary part. And it could become a political thing as well. It already has. Um, so yeah, so this is what is eventually going to be something that will happen and will occur. Um, I will leave um, this title of the article in the description box, and you can look at it yourself. And I think people should take climate change more serious. Some people think it doesn't exist and it isn't happening, and it's just for money. I've heard some people who are involved in politics on the right wing side say that they think it's just made up. But you can clearly see that there are some things that have happened that point to sea level rise or groundwater that is coming up in some areas. There are some areas now that have like a lot of flooding that wasn't before, and it is happening a lot more often now, or it has gotten worse over the years. So I think it's gradual. It's a gradual process. People usually tend to not believe. Some people are skeptics till the last minute, and you don't want to be like that. The last minute, now you believe, wow, I believe it now, but it's too late. There's nowhere to seek refuge if you wait till the last minute. There's not much you can do about any of it if you just ignore it and you keep ignoring it. And so, but it has said that it's going to happen regardless. What they're working on is trying to slow it.